No, a 401k is not when you run 85Ks and then tack on an extra kilometer for fun. I mean, the first time I heard 401k, I definitely thought it was a running thing, and I thought I could never do it because I'm not a runner. That's enough of the terrible jokes, but one thing that isn't terrible is bopping that like button. It takes 1 second and will spare you from all future bad jokes. Well, I can't guarantee that, but you will get this picture of a cute baby bunny. Now, back to the finance. So, you've heard of a 401k. Well, if you haven't, now you have. But what is it? To me, it's one of the coolest tools you can use to plan for retirement. And then some people will say, yeah, well, that's so boring, retirement's so far away, blah, 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 blah. But I personally find this stuff fascinating. Note that if you hear me say 401k, I'm referring to what's called a traditional 401k. There is something called a Roth 401k, which I won't cover in this video, but that's a newer thing, and I'll probably cover in a future video. A 401k is a tax advantage retirement account through your employer. If you remember from my Roth IRA, that's a different type of tax advantage retirement account. So brief summary, if you haven't watched the video, which you definitely should, a Roth IRA is funded with after-tax dollars. So you pay taxes on money and it goes in, but then when you take the money out, you don't have to pay taxes, but a 401k is kind of backwards. So for a 401k, you put in money that you have not paid taxes on, and then when you take the money out, you pay taxes on it. So you can think of a Roth IRA as a pay taxes now, but don't pay taxes later, and a 401k as the reverse. So don't pay taxes now, but pay taxes later. And don't worry if this doesn't make sense. I'm going to try and give an example later, and hopefully that'll make things as clear as water. Hopefully it's like clean drinking water, but you get the point. And adding more to the tax advantage point, since you're contributing with pre-tax dollars, so before you've paid taxes, it means it lowers your taxable income. So if you make, for example, $50,000 a year before taxes, but you contribute $10,000 a year to a 401k, you're taxed as if you made $40,000 a year, which means less taxes, which is good. Another important thing I must say is that the 401k itself is not an investment. The 401k, similar to a Roth IRA, is an investment vehicle. Once you get the money into a 401k, you can direct it to go into different types of investments to hold within the account, but the account itself is not an investment. Another seconded thing, I'm just adding a lot of different notes, I guess. Another important thing to note is that since it's a retirement account, you're not supposed to withdraw the funds until you're at least 59 and a half years of age, or there is an additional penalty, and I'll talk more about that later. 401k contributions are actually made up of 3 parts. The first part is your salary contribution, the second part are called catch-up contributions, and the third part is called the employer match. The salary contribution is exactly what it sounds like. It's the amount that you contribute from your salary into your 401k, and as of 2021, the contribution limit is $19,500 a year. The second part, as I briefly mentioned, of a 401k are called catch-up contributions. So if you're over the age of 50, you're allowed to put an additional $6,500 on top of the $19,500 a year into your 401k. And the idea is like, if you're starting a lot older, and you want to catch up to people who are younger than you, you're going to need to put more money in. And lastly is probably my favorite part of the 401k. It is the employer match. And this is literally free money. You've definitely heard scams where people say it's free money, but a 401k employer match is pretty much free money. What an employer match basically is it depends on the company, but they're saying if you put in X amount of dollars, we'll match you X amount of dollars. And again, it depends on the company. So for example, if your company policy is 50% of however much you deposit, if you put in $10,000 a year into a 401k, they will match you and put in an additional $5,000 a year. So that's basically a guaranteed 50% return with no work on your part. Side note, a not so great or great, depending on who you are, thing about a 401k is that the investment options in a 401k are usually more limited than other vehicles like a Roth IRA or a standard brokerage account. For example, there are usually only a few index funds, mutual funds, or like bond funds that you can buy, whereas conversely in a Roth IRA, you can buy pretty much whatever you want. You could even trade options in a Roth IRA if you wanted to. Another kind of meh thing about 401ks is what's called RMD, or required minimum distribution, and this is basically to say that when you reach the age of 72, you must withdraw a certain amount from your 401k each year. And the reason they do this is because the money that you put in, you haven't paid taxes on. So the IRS only gets taxed, they don't get taxed, you get taxed when you take money out of the 401k, and they're basically forcing you to do that so they can collect taxes. Also, if you are self-employed, there's something called a solo 401k plan. I'm not going to talk about it because I'm not self-employed, so I don't really know much about this, but that's something definitely to look into if you are self-employed. And I won't walk through the differences between a Roth 401k, a traditional 401k, and a Roth IRA in this video, but I do have a video about the Roth IRA and I plan to make more videos, so make sure you're subscribed. Those are most of the additional notes points I suppose that I could think of for a 401k. In this section of the video, I want to talk about mistakes that people make with their 401ks. The first mistake that people make with a 401k is putting in money that they're going to need relatively soon, let's say like within the next 5 to 10 years. And the reason this is a bad idea is because if you are in dire need of money and the only way to get it is from your 401k, you're going to be slapped with something called the early distribution tax, which is penalizing you for taking money out of it before you retire. So without giving numbers, this just sounds like a bad time. The second mistake that people make is not taking full advantage of the employer match or not saving enough. So remember, as I mentioned earlier, the employer match is literally free money. You put in money and then your employer puts in money to match you, and maybe it's like some percent, but there's no like if, ands, or buts about it. So that's pretty much free money. And there was a study that revealed that 1/4 of non-retirees indicated that they have no retirement savings. 1 out of 4 people, especially nowadays where pensions are becoming a thing of the past. This was a really scary statistic for me. And additionally, fewer than 4 in 10 people felt that their retirement savings were on track. My point is not to say you have to max out your 401k or you have to max out the employer match, because it's just the fact that not everyone is going to be able to, no matter how much they save. But anything you can put in, especially at the beginning, and consistent small amounts over time really do help. So for example, if you're able to put $100 a month into a 401k and your employer matches you dollar for dollar, so a 100% employer match, and we assume an average yearly return of 8% from the stock market, after 40 years, this would be $621,735.64. As a point of comparison, if you started contributing to your 401k later and were only able to contribute for 20 years, so instead of the $621,000 you would get, after 20 years of contributing $100 a month, this would be $109,828.71. So for about half the time, you're getting about 1/6 of the results. So definitely get started as early as you can and try to make consistent deposits to your 401k. Again, you don't have to max it out. Not everyone is going to be able to do that, but slow and steady wins the race, right? Another mistake that people make with their 401ks is not knowing about something called the vesting schedule. And this applies if you're looking to switch jobs anytime soon. One thing I did not mention earlier about 401ks is that some companies do their employer match via what's called vesting, which is basically to say that instead of the second that you put in your money and they match you, but over a period of time. So if you put in $100, they will match you $100, but they'll give you like, I don't know, $25 a year for 4 years. So it's like vesting over time. And some people think of this as like a way for the company to incentivize the worker to continue being productive and to stay at the company. But my point is that if you're planning to change companies, make sure you know the vesting schedule of your current company, because if you leave too soon, like it might be the matter of like a couple weeks or even a couple months, but you might miss out on a lot of money due to the employer match if you jump ship too soon. The last mistake that people make that I kind of touched on earlier with 401ks is they wait to open a 401k account. So as Albert Einstein once said, compound interest is the 8th wonder of the world. He who understands it earns it. He who doesn't pays it. Now, I don't know if Einstein actually said this because you don't really know if you can believe anything on the internet, but the sentiment is true. I had a few examples earlier. The earlier you start, the more time and compounding is on your side. So to be completely honest, I made this video because I recently started working and contributing to my own 401k, and I saw a lot of my coworkers asking questions like, what is a 401k? How do we contribute? Why should we contribute? And similar questions. I really wish I had learned this in high school, and since I can't travel back in time, although that would be really cool, darn it, I really wish I could travel back in time. But since I can't do that, I hope you found this video informative or at least enjoyed some of my bad jokes, and I'll see you guys soon.